But y'all looking at the thumbnail, y'all see the title, and this is our Hyenas OP. You already know. Let's get it, bro. Tirzu, let's go.
Halfway! Stop them! The mission area is yours.
Teamwork, bro. Teamwork.
More enemies spotted. It's now or never. Stop them! They captured the mission area!
Well, you can't expect to win them all.
Damn. Teamwork. I thought I was gonna say teamwork. Epic win, epic fail, bro. L to the Hyenas.
The hyena may be one of the most misunderstood characters in the entire game. Hyena mains get flamed constantly with insults like cowardly, underhanded, and stupid, when in reality, they're one of the most interesting, powerful, and effective characters of them all. They have several abilities which grant them unique advantages seen almost nowhere else in the game, and a stat spread that is undoubtedly very unorthodox for a member of the carnivorous.
I think they're very strong. I think they're very smart and intelligent, especially when it comes to teamwork.
Mammal faction. So today, let's examine the stats and abilities of the hyena to get a better sense of their true strengths and weaknesses, and ultimately decide where they fall on the tier list.
Okay.
First, let's do a quick overview of how exactly the hyena became such a popular character to pick in the current meta. Perhaps one of the most counterintuitive facts about the hyena is that the hyena is a feliform, meaning it is more closely related to builds like lions and tigers, not wolves or bears. This is strange because clearly in terms of the majority of their basic traits,
I thought it was like compared to that.
the hyena is very
Bears?
canine-like. There are a few different subtypes of the hyena build, but this video is going to focus mostly on the spotted hyena, simply because it is by far the most competitively viable. But I will discuss the other subtypes later on in the video. Next, let's do an examination of the spotted hyena.
Okay. Oh, I ain't gonna lie. I thought the what's called gonna what is still gonna be the intelligent is at 60. Power. It could be all depend on teamwork. That's why it almost up there cause teamwork. Defense, yeah. Wait, what's PER? That's perk? It perk? I don't know. HP. Oof, gotta work on that. It just 60. Oof, gotta work on that. Guess this is agility. I'm not mad at it. Teamwork, baby.
Hyena's base stats to see if we can pick out any obvious standout strengths or weaknesses. And right away, one thing we can spot is just how high the hyena's power stat is. The hyena's bite force is one of the highest in the game, especially when you account for size. Sure, the Nile crocodile and hippopotamus have more powerful bites, but they're all several times larger than your average hyena. But for a mid-sized carnivorous mammal, the hyena is a huge outlier in terms of its bite force. Moving on to mobility, this one's a bit tricky. Mobility is their second highest stat, and indeed, hyenas are quite excellent runners if viewed in a vacuum. But taken in proper context, it is a bit more of a mixed bag. The hyena actually has one of the lowest top speeds of any carnivorous mammal build in the African savanna server. Now, top speed isn't the end-all be-all of mobility. Because of a special ability we'll discuss later, the hyena's stamina is effectively doubled compared to that of similarly sized predators, allowing it to chase other players for a greatly extended distance. Now, because of its lower top speed, it usually cannot close the distance on its own during pursuit, but a lot can happen during an extended chase, and there's very little room for error when being chased by hyenas. Still, having an unimpressive top speed does present some vulnerabilities in the hyena's strategy.
Bro, so lucky, so lucky.
In addition to potentially getting dusted by your hunting target during a chase, having weaker burst mobility options gives you less opportunity to retreat should an opponent decide to counterattack. This makes it tougher to pressure opponents who are standing their ground, as you can't weave in and out of their attack range as safely, and could easily get hit for serious damage if you aren't careful. Which brings me to their next stats, HP and defense. Hyenas exhibit surprisingly high toughness in combat, being able to walk off a decent amount of damage. Still, given just how insanely stacked the African meta is, even with above average tankiness, there's still very little room for mistakes in combat. They're still nowhere near as durable as, say, the honey badger.
Oh yeah, them thing right there ain't no joke.
The gold standard for absurdly high defense stats in the African server. Still, gotta give credit where it's due, Hyenas can handle your average scrap just fine, which is kind of necessary due to their next stat. Their intelligence is hard to place. On one hand, they are excellent pack hunters, able to coordinate hunts and attack from multiple directions.
That's what I'm saying. Teamwork, baby.
This offsets the disadvantages of their lower movement speed a bit, and also makes their attacks very hard to defend against alone. However, hyena clans are also some of the least safe teams to be on, with friendly fire being uniquely commonplace. Now, most teams experience at least some dueling between clanmates, but typically this is confined either to specific seasonal events like the Rut, or as a result of a new party leader securing dominance. With hyenas, the fights are fairly constant, especially after a successful hunt, as party members must then compete for loot. This stands in contrast to other top predators of the server, like wild dogs, which have a much less competitive process to split loot. So it's surprising that a build with such high intelligence is prone to as much friendly
Oh my god.
fire as, say, a rhinoceros. For stealth, hyenas do have some fairly decent camouflage, but this is almost entirely negated by how much noise hyenas make. Hyenas are notoriously loud, not only in their vocalizations, their signature laughs and chirps, but also their movement. Their running gait is a sort of gallop, which is significantly louder than the careful steps of other feliform predators. Couple that with their lack of retractable claws, and they really just have a very difficult time concealing their presence as they approach hunting targets. In fact, among their competition, hyenas are more likely to get ambushed themselves than actually pull off a surprise attack. Their perception abilities are pretty typical, nothing too out of the ordinary in this department. They aren't all that good at detecting hidden players, but do have an ear for sensing commotion that they might be able to jump into. Their sense of smell is also acutely attuned to being able to detect carrion, aiding them in their quest to scavenge. Next, the hyena's special abilities. There are two main ones. The first is the hyena's disease resistance. Hyenas are second only to vultures in their ability to ignore poison damage from bacteria and viruses. Now, disease resistance is pretty much always useful. It increases a character's chances to recover from injury, and lowers the chance of just getting one shot out of nowhere by a random illness. But having a supercharged immune system is an expensive ability that comes with some downsides too, so this needs to serve a dual purpose, and in this case it's probably pretty obvious this ability dramatically expands the options they have to scavenge from. For most carnivorous characters, the window for scavenging a carcass closes pretty quickly, especially under the heat of the African sun. Careless players can easily incur the food poisoning debuff if they aren't careful picking at old remains. Hyenas can get away with being a lot less cautious in this regard. This synergizes extremely well with their high bite damage, which enables them to crack open and digest bones, a trait which puts them into a pretty exclusive club of builds which are able to reliably access marrow as a form of sustenance. When it comes to large bones, it's pretty much just humans, hyenas, and crocodilians that are actually able to crack them. Their second ability is their massive heart, which is roughly double the size of similar carnivorous builds. This grants them effectively twice as much endurance as they otherwise would have, which helps offset their lack of speed outright. Even if they can't outspeed their targets, they're usually able to outlast them and catch them once they run out of stamina. There's not too much else to say about this ability, it's pretty straightforward, but one thing I thought might also be interesting is to talk about which abilities the hyena does not have, since I think that can oftentimes be just as informative as to which advantages and disadvantages they exhibit as talking about which abilities they do have. One of the most striking absences is retractable claws. Hyenas are part of the feliform faction, meaning that if they wanted to spec into that ability, it is available to them. In fact, before they reallocated their evolution points into higher bite damage and disease resistance, they actually did have retractable claws, which likely would have given them higher stealth, the ability
The claw nerf ruined his character.
to climb, and higher slashing damage. But for whatever reason, the most popular strategy for the proto-hyena build needed all the help it can get in terms of run speed, so keeping the claws unretracted as a means of traction was a worthwhile sacrifice. Another interesting absence is a tail. Hyenas have extremely short tails, which locks them out of a lot of potential abilities. Now, obviously, I'm not going to rag on hyenas too hard for not having a prehensile tail or anything like that. I'm a human main myself, so it's not like I don't understand the upside of sacrificing access to tail-based abilities. But still—
What? Like, bro, your tail? What? The tail, bro?
among carnivorous builds in the African savanna, tails can be useful counterweights that provide stability during a chase, lowering the chances that a player might trip and fall if they take a wrong step. It's interesting, one of the benefits to not having a long tail is just that it's one less thing that other players can attack. Given that hyenas heavily favor attacking the back end of a target, and even have been known to bite off tails, I have to wonder if hyenas simply have been opting for shorter tails just so that they don't get griefed by their fellow hyena mains. Next, let's talk about their matchups. Given that they compete for the same prey, the most important matchup for hyenas is the lion matchup. Unfortunately, even though hyenas have a much higher bite force, in 1v1 combat the lion's reach advantage and size advantage are too powerful, resulting in this being an almost completely one-sided matchup. A few paw swipes comboed into a bite to the neck will zero to death a hyena basically every time, and there's not much counterplay a hyena has alone, especially given that the lion is able to sprint faster over short distances, so the hyena can't even run away. Hyena mains are often depicted as thieves, and while they do often steal kills when they get a chance, when it comes to lions it's almost always the other way around. Lion players love to score free loot by chasing away hyenas, and unfortunately even with the whole squad together it only takes a few lions to drive them away. Now, not all is lost in this scenario. This is actually one of the situations where the bone-crushing bite is most useful, as there's still lots of bone marrow left after lions finish looting the kill that only hyenas can access. But still, this matchup is rough, and it's hard to even imagine what ways the hyena could respec in order to challenge the lion. Lions are really the only problematic matchup though. Hyenas go pretty even with leopards, with the only real pain point being the hyena's lack of ability to climb. Leopards exploit this by dragging their kills up into trees where hyenas can't contest them. But this also puts the leopard in a pretty vulnerable position, and if the hyena clan is large enough they can essentially trap the leopard player. And as for cheetahs, I mean, do I really even need to say anything? They pretty much have to avoid hunting anywhere near hyenas, otherwise their efforts are all but guaranteed to be in vain. Cheetahs have essentially no options when it comes to defending their kills from hyenas, and they can't climb either, so there's nowhere to stash their loot for later. So with all this being said, where do hyenas belong on the tier list? This is where some distinction between the different hyena variants is necessary. The striped hyena and brown hyena both have a lower power stat and mobility stat than the spotted hyena, and focus more heavily on scavenging. Instead, they put more points into defense and perception, aiding them in finding carrion far away. Ultimately, I consider these builds to be a lot less viable, as they have to rely on griefing noobs and janitoring in order to get by. I would rank them in C tier. The spotted hyena, however, is a much different story. It is legitimately one of the most powerful builds in the entire African metagame, and can hold its own amid some intense hostilities. Its special abilities enable it to subvert some of the downsides that come with sharing territory with a larger predator. However, much as I am tempted to be a contrarian and give them the rank of S tier, I don't think anything about the hyena is truly game warping enough to merit that top tier rank. They do still have bad matchups, and even for their more evenly matched ones, they can't get careless. Still, there's no doubt hyenas are a serious force to be reckoned with, and easily deserve the rank of A tier. Among hyenas, friendly fire isn't a mistake, it's part of the meta. When high value loot is on the line, trust goes out the window. If you've ever wanted to see me embrace that same cutthroat strategy, you need for a 10,000 told everyone we best of all yet, so you can really on screen. Thanks to Nebula for supporting this video.
Guess that was it right there. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen, bro. I like that, bro. You know what I'm saying? Hyenas are OP. I like that. But you already know. Link button, not that good stuff, man. I might be sick.